Badlands. Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
All right. Welcome, everybody. Geopolitics with Ghost. I'm your host, Gordon McCormick. Today is January 20th, 2026. We are 1 year into the President Trump's second term, second official term, I should say, his third term. I mean, the devolution term, of course, being the Biden term. And man, the proofs on that are astounding. Okay, so I want to cut to Trump is live right now. He is hosting a press briefing. I know we're running this, Jessica, I know we're running this on a separate stream, and that's fine. I think it's good for Badlands to run separate streams like that because then we have a nice place we can go back and pull clips from. But I want to jump over to what Trump just said here, if I can find the spot that he said it, because I was listening to it as we were going live. How is everybody? What's up in the chat? Let me get the chat up on screen so y'all can hang out. I don't know how long we're going to listen to Trump because we have so much to talk about. Davos is on fire right now. I mean, in figuratively, the World Economic Forum. I want to talk about that, but I want to pull a specific clip that Trump just said if I can find it as I was watching live, and then I kind of want to listen to it for a few minutes. He's basically talking about, so far he's been talking about like the criminals that have come into our country, and he's been holding up pictures of them. I love him just like holding pictures up of them. It's such like a boss move. But let's see if I can get the picture or the clip of him talking about the woman who was shot.
Whichever you like, you can call him whatever you like. They're both right. He's sleepy and he's crooked. He was the worst president we've ever had.
And he's crooked.
And we've had some bad ones too. I can tell you have to. Gang member in that church was horrible yesterday. Look at this here. 24 convictions.
This is amazing.
24 times.
He's just sitting here hanging out with the press, just
like not charges. These are convictions.
Flipping through.
So he comes from outside the country. Do you think he's going to?
And he's just bullshitting with them. I love this.
They want to take him out of our country. Professional people that want to see our country do badly. A professional opera singer. She was so loud.
Here it is. Okay.
It's a man murder.
All right. So listen to what he said here about the woman who was shot.
One of many. All they want to do is get him out. They want to take him out of our country. And we're met with paid agitators and insurrectionists, troublemakers. They're paid. You know, when the woman was shot, I felt terribly about that. And I understand both sides of it. But when she was shot, there was another woman that was screaming shame, 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 right? You saw it. So loud. Like a professional opera singer. She was so loud and so professional. She wasn't a woman that was hurt, like, oh, my heart's injured. She was a professional. She's shame, shame. She's screaming, shame, shame. I said, that's not a normal person. That's a professional. These are professional agitators and professional people that want to see our country do badly. But that's not happening because we have the hottest country anywhere in the world, despite this stuff. Look at this. All top of the line criminals. They're not going to be good. They're not going to be well behaved here. I could do thousands. We had over 3,000 in the last fairly short while. Just in Minnesota. What's the number, Carol? 10,000.
10,000 criminals arrested in Minnesota.
10,000 criminals. And these are serious.
Okay, so I'm gonna let Trump just like keep going. Like we're gonna pivot and we'll come back and I may or may not pull clips from this and talk about this in the future. I love what he's doing here. I wish he would do this more often. This is like the fireside. Was it FDR who used to do the fireside chats? Somebody used to do the fireside chats. This is fantastic. Like people just hanging out with Trump, the public getting to hang out with Trump. And remember, we did Hugo Chavez last week. This is like the weekly television show he used to do, and the people in the interviews describing it were like, it was like you got to just hang out with the president of Venezuela, right? Even if you didn't know him, it felt very personal. That's what this feels like. But he says right there, they're professional agitators. They're paid agitators. The woman was shot. There was another woman there filming it. He said he started screaming. She started yelling like professional opera singer. She didn't seem like somebody in distress. She seemed like somebody who was there to do exactly what she did. Man, this is who I voted for. This is the Trump that I know, right? Trump has been wearing many masks for the past year. He's been wearing many masks. He's been engaging in a lot of this deception against a lot of different groups. And it's caused a lot of consternation, a lot of panic among our truth community that Trump was not going to follow through on the promises that he made. But I think that all of that was a ruse. And I think the ruse was all about the fact that you can't launch a revolution, which is what MAGA is. This presidency is going to be a revolution, a real revolution. Not a violent revolution, but a revolution that fundamentally transforms not only the government of the United States, but the society of the United States. And you can't do that until the economic foundation is there. Because without the economic foundation, you become every other third world country that falls into color revolution under the CIA. People get out in the streets. They're desperate. They fall into chaos. They can be bought off because they're desperate to feed their kids or pay their mortgage or whatever. This is important to have the strong economic underpinning. So let's start there. So before the order that I wanted to go in here, I really wanted to talk about Iran because I promised everyone we would go into Iran a little bit. I want to talk about, we're definitely going to cover Davos. I want to spend the majority of the show talking about Davos. I want to get to Patagonia if we can. We have talked about Patagonia before, but it's blown up now. There's now Chile is doing it. Chile is on fire. But let's go to Steve Bannon, because he hosted Scott Bessent on his show this morning. And Bessent, I would encourage everybody to go listen to this interview with Scott Bessent. It was fantastic.
Scott Bessent.
All right, so let's listen to some of the things. I'm going to speed it up a little, and I apologize. I know people don't like it when we speed things up, but we got a lot to get to, and I want to listen to some of the things Bessent says here. He talks about Europe and how Europe is basically a joke now, and we need to, we're going to help them, but we can't really take them seriously until they fix themselves.
Secretary, you led the advance guard over there before the president arrived. Your message yesterday was take a deep breath. Ursula von der Leyen and the others saying, hey, we understand this is a permanent shift. We have to think about this permanently. The markets you've been promoting and saying, hey, look, the Trump trade is a smart trade. The markets this morning looks like they may be questioning that. Dalio came out and said we may be going into capital wars where Europe are going to reallocate away from the United States. Your assessment, because you started off, there was a lot of swagger when the United States showed up. Is there going to be continued swagger when the president arrives?
Steve, good to be with you. And, I can tell you here in Davos, remember their paper a few years ago that we should all be eating insects. And given the food here, I think I'd rather eat insects. But to be serious, the president's got plenty to swagger about. It's been an incredible year. Peace deals, tax deals, trade deals. The Atlanta Fed GDP numbers, 5.3% forward inflation. Looks like it could be at the Fed's target by the end of the summer. And we've got the hottest economy on Earth. Now, the Europeans are very good at value signaling. And if you remember, probably their most strident moment against Russia, Ukraine was when they put the shown the Ukraine flag up on the side of the EU Parliament building. I am sure that Vladimir Putin was quaking in his boots. So look, the Europeans, they like to talk in these big terms. They like to talk in these big terms, and they're our allies. They want to be under the U.S. umbrella, and they will be.
Let's go to, I want to talk about Ursula von der Leyen. She kind of gave a history of the U.S. currency as Bretton Woods and, about the Nixon coming off the gold standard. She implied that that's actually going to be in question. When she talked about a new geopolitical realignment, she implied that this has to do with the U.S. currency. Then Ray Dalio came up and said, hey, you may see a reallocation. We may be heading into a time of capital wars. Under your stewardship, it's been quite evident with the president's strategy and you executing that the Europeans have piled into what you call the Trump trade, the America First trade, the MAGA trade. Are you concerned at all, not just the geopolitical realignment, but I don't know, it's $100 trillion of assets I think the Europeans own of our stocks and our bonds, sir?
Well, Steve, a couple of things. And I wanted to backtrack for a moment because I don't believe that the markets are going down, or I don't believe the primary catalyst for the market going down is the kerfuffle over Greenland. I believe the markets are going down because the Japanese bond market had a 6 standard deviation move for the past 2 days. That would be in their 10-year bonds. I've been in touch with my economic counterparts in Japan and urged them to take the necessary measures to stabilize their bond market, but that's spilling all over into all bond markets. German yields are up, French yields are up, US yields are up. Again, it's mostly the Japanese bond market, got nothing to do with Greenland. And the Europeans could shake their fist. They love regulation. They have low growth. And our message to them has been, come grow with us, be part of our innovation economy. Because Steve, imagine this, that Europe has no cloud of its own. It's the US and China. How is it that 400 million people haven't been able to develop that? And
that's the important part.
Overregulation.
Listen.
And not my words, Mario Draghi, the former Prime Minister of Italy, former head of the ECB, issued a gigantic report called the Draghi Competitiveness Report. And he said that he believes that goods intra-Europe are tariffed at about 50%, services are tariffed at 100%. So it is just this regulatory morass that Europe, they like to export regulations. I've had many of our great US tech executives, some I know you take shots at rightly, tell me that it's easier to do business in China than in the EU.
A lot of people don't realize your
Okay,
expertise
so
in Asia and East Asia. I want to go.
I'm going to skip ahead because there's only a few more minutes, but I do want to get to a few more things he says. Hits the nail on the head right there. When he talks about the oligarchs are telling him that it's easier, like the tech bros are telling him it's easier to do business in China than it is in the EU because of regulations. And I saw Shire Reeve, what's up, Shire? Shire's always in the chat. Love seeing you. Said something important that I wanted to touch on. Says, too many people are saying F Europe. We are a tied people facing the same threat. There is no fixing one without the other. 100% right. You hit the nail right on the head. But it's also important to back up and look at who created the world as we understand it now, right? Who set it up? And yes, you can talk about secret societies. You can talk about certain groups of people that have infiltrated different empires over the ages. But what is the ostensible vehicle that was used to set up the current world? It was joint stock ventures launched primarily out of England, but launched out of a number of European countries that engaged in the age of exploration, the imperial colonization of the world, right? It wasn't the governments of Europe that colonized the world necessarily. I mean, the governments were protecting, they were sticking the flag in the ground and providing the military to protect the economic interest, but it was corporations that were formed that went and settled the new world. I think Columbus was funded by the Spanish government, the Spanish monarchy, but it was the Virginia Company that settled Virginia. It was the East India Company that went and set up shop in India in 1600 when Queen Elizabeth signed their charter after years of declining and saying, no, I'm not going to sign this. And then she finally did sign it. It was the Moscow Company that went and settled Eastern Europe. And they had a company for, the Palestine Company is the one that went in the early 1800s, went into Palestine and started building farms and agriculture schools. And then that eventually led to British mandate Palestine. And then it led to the state of Israel. That was a corporation, a joint stock venture that was created as under a charter in England, and then went and engaged in corporate exploration in Palestine. So it was corporations that they never tell you that part in school, though, when they're talking about the age of exploration and the colonial era. Like, they never tell you that it wasn't the European people, so to speak. It wasn't even really the governments. I mean, the governments were involved, of course, but it was corporations and banks. Those are the ones who went out. And then who got the resources? The corporations and the banks. And then they set up all the rules. They set up the empires, right? First, you got the Portuguese Empire in the 1400s. Then you got the Spanish Empire in the 1500s. Then you got the British Empire, the French Empire, the German, the Russian Empire, the German Empire. I mean, Austro-Hungarian Empire was mixed in there as well. But you had empires all over the place that were just setting up colonies around the world, exploiting the resources, bringing them back, and then consolidating their power. And then come the 20th century, after facilitating both World War I and World War II, which these oligarchs did, these European oligarchs did this. And by the way, I think World War I and World War II were set up to destroy the European civilization. That was the whole point of it. They were controlling both sides. They were the ones who went and funded the Bolsheviks, pulled the Bolsheviks out of the ghettos of Eastern Europe, gave them money and said, go into Moscow and kill everybody in Moscow. Those were the bankers, Jewish bankers from New York City did that. Those same people were involved in Germany and getting the Third Reich up and running. It's very clear to me now the Third Reich was in bed with the Zionists. Very clear to me now that is what the story was. Is that, and whatever may have happened in camps regarding Jewish people being put in camps, that was probably Jew on Jew crime. That's my assertion. I think that theory is probably valid, that the Jews that refused to embrace Zionism were the ones who were persecuted and put into camps. And that probably was a much smaller number than we're led to believe in terms of people who were actually subjugated beyond imprisonment. The point is, though, is that after World War II, because World War II destroyed the manufacturing base of Europe, the manufacturing base was really never rebuilt. It just was transferred to America. We became the manufacturing base for the world, and that led to the golden age, the first golden age in America, like of the modern era, in the 1950s. And then the regulators came in and they said, all right, now that we have built this thing up, let's start, like, we've built up this nice, enormous tax base so we can extract wealth from the population. They imposed an income tax. Now let's start to offshore all this manufacturing to the third world, because we can exploit those people. We can pay them pennies on the dollar to make all the goods. And then we can bring the goods back to these first world marketplaces and sell them to the people at pennies on the dollar and make bank. And I mean, the whole thing, it was just set up to basically create a one world government, a new world order. And it was the European powers that created the regulatory bodies that started all of this after World War II. That's what Besson's talking about. That's what Bannon's talking about. And yes, there's definitely an operation in effect to eliminate white people, to destroy the white civilization, which is Western civilization, which is European civilization, which is Christianity, because at the core of Western civilization is Christianity. There is no Western civilization without Christianity. And in order to save Western civilization, in order to save Christianity, in order to save European civilization, we have to overthrow the masters that have created this whole thing, which are not just the elites of Europe, but also probably some Eastern European, Central Asian. I mean, yeah, Eastern European, Central Asian, Khazarian mafia. Like that's probably a thing, among others. There's elites from every society that's probably involved in this. And yes, I think it all leads back to Israel. And yes, I think it all leads back to Davos. And yes, all of this is very timely. But if we're going to save Europe, which we need to do, we need to save European civilization. It's the greatest civilization that ever was created, European civilization. If we're going to save it, we have to destroy their leadership. Their leadership is a cancer on the world. And that's what I think Besant and Bannon are talking about here. So let's let them wrap up, because I want them to address a few more things, and then we'll get into it.
Japan for a minute. This is such a significant ally for us, and the new prime minister has been really, I think, President Trump's one of his strongest supporters. She announced the snap election, but she also announced she was going to have a new economic model. Is that what's driving this turmoil in the Japanese bond market or the world bond market? Is her new plan, or the fact she called a snap election because she's riding a wave of popularity, and she's quite virulently anti-CCP and very pro the American alliance in East Asia between Korea, Japan, Taiwan, and the United States?
Look, the prime minister is fantastic. She's very popular. She's called this snap election to give her a longer mandate. But I think that they failed to recognize Abenomics was a reflationary program, brought Japan out of 20 years.
That is such an important little point he makes there. Abenomics, which is Shinzo Abe, shout out, rest in peace, Shinzo Abe, a reflationary program to bring them out of a 20-year stagflation. Japan is always cited as the textbook example of stagflation, of what stagflation can look like. 20 years of basically no economic growth, just malaise, as he's saying. And then Abe pulls them out of it by stimulating their economy. And yet here we are 10, 15 years later, and they're still doing the same thing that he was doing, that the same program. They're still stimulating the economy instead of actually pivoting to the next step. And that's why Japan is not taking off into the golden age the way they should have already.
Of a malaise, a deflationary malaise, but that program has been running for 14 years. So what Japan doesn't need is more stimulus. What they do need is to let the BOJ do their job. So I'm confident that the economic team, will do whatever it takes to stabilize the message.
You walked the audience through for months and months and months to say, hey, look, the big, beautiful bill is a supply side tax cut. Here's the bet we're making. It's the last chance we've got to really do supply side, to focus on manufacturing, growing manufacturing. Also, the tariff deals, you had a brilliant defense of it. I think we played some clips at the top of the cold open about redoing the commercial relationships and how significant that was working also to drive manufacturing. Today, I think, or yesterday, they announced the deficit for last year, over $2 trillion, up to $39 trillion debt. You've told our audience for a long time and said, hey, look, we've got our last chance to try to grow our way out of here. Now, the Atlanta Fed is saying real growth of, in particularly in the private sector, is over 5%. Do you still hold with that you and President Trump believe we can actually grow our way out of here, and that somehow in some future time this year, or later this year, or next year, we're going to start getting our arms around the stimulus we're putting into the economy, the $2 trillion deficits?
Well, Steve, for the calendar year, the deficit actually went down by about $200 billion. And a big reason for that was President Trump's tariffs. So we had a fiscal contraction, and then we grew the GDP at, call it 3%, with about 2.5% inflation. So the really important number to look at here is the deficit to GDP. So 2024 deficit to GDP, calendar year, not fiscal year, was 6.9%. This past year, 2025, 5.4%. So we have made a substantial dent in the deficit to GDP. That's the important number. That shows that we are growing our way out of this. So we brought the numerator down and we grew the denominator. And if we keep this up, we're well on the way to my 3% deficit to GDP by the time the president leaves office. And Steve, the other thing that's I just want to say this. The other thing that's important here too. The other thing that's important here too is what is the reason we're not making more progress on the deficit is because we are doing the immediate expensing of equipment, of factory structures, and of farm structures, and that is productive. That is productive spending, and so we take a tax hit on that upfront that business people any of your viewers who have small businesses, they buy an office computer, they can write 100% of it off. They build a new farm shed, they can write 100% of that off. But you're increasing the tax revenues the year after, the following year. So it's not just social spending that goes out the door, never to be seen again. We're pulling the rubber band back further and further. So our economic potential gets bigger and bigger.
That's the important part I wanted to hear, well, y'all to hear him say. Okay. What he's describing there. Now, in the eyes of the government, you know, when you're allowing people to just do 100% business tax write-off, right? There are people who would describe some of this as socialism, because you're basically you're allowing, you know, social spending. You're investing money. The government's investing money in the private sector, right? Again, I made comparisons the other day that in 30 years we may see bad historians try to accuse President Trump of everything they accuse Hugo Chavez of being a socialist, that he was setting up trade barriers and shutting down the free market, and all these corporations lost billions and billions of dollars as a result of it. But Bessent's explaining it right there. He's like, this isn't just social spending for the sake of social spending. We're not investing in windmill companies that are going to go bankrupt in 3 years after all their money's laundered out the door by their executives. We are investing in small business in middle America, in Main Street America, so that next year, the year after that, the quote unquote tax base grows. I mean, he's calling it the tax base, but I don't think we really care about the tax base. When they're talking about allowing corporations to write off 100% of their expenditures, you're talking about eliminating the tax program. Like you're like the tax system altogether, right? We've already seen all these signals about the individual income tax being eliminated. Now he's talking about corporations getting 100% tax write-offs. That's clearly what we're pivoting to. And again, like, I just see a lot of parallels between what was being done in Venezuela and now what Trump, or what at least was trying to be done in Venezuela, with their oil program, and what is now happening with Trump and these tariffs. So let's pivot to Davos, and we'll talk about Iran as we go, because I think Iran is going to kind of become the thing. I mean, Iran's going to become ubiquitous with everything that's happening right now. This morning on Badlands Daily, Brian and I talked about the obvious color revolution that's happening in America right now, that Don Lemon and others seem to be involved in. Here is a clip from a few days. I think this is actually from the 4-hour question and answer Q&A thing that Putin always does around Christmas time, around the New Year every year. So this is probably from a month ago, maybe less than a month ago, 3 weeks ago. I remember seeing this when it happened. But listen to what he says here. So he was asked a question by that young woman about the church and about Satanism in society. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't think I'm sharing the right tab. Excuse me, guys. My bad. All right. So it's just a 30-second clip, but he was being asked about Satanism by this young woman at this Q&A session, where people are allowed to come and just ask any question to Putin, and they ask him all kinds of things, important questions, silly questions, whatever. But listen to what he says here.
I truly agree with you. Satanism and cult services, sorceries, this is nonsense. That is something that confuses people, brings them to darkness, and affects them greatly, affects their psyche, their morale, and we need to fight against it, but do it carefully without violating human rights. Your colleagues have mentioned it. I truly agree with you.
Okay, so he's talking about how they're fighting Satanism. This is something that Putin has said many times. Kirill Dmitriev has posted about it on X all the time, about how they're fighting Satanism, and everyone needs to join Team Russia, because Team Russia is at the tip of the spear fighting Satanism. I'll hit one more quick Putin soundbite. I think it's from a day or two ago. Here. And so he's being asked about Greenland.
Изменилось, что ли, со времен...
Oh, yeah, I'll have to read it out loud because this doesn't have English overdubs. He says, has something changed since Biden's time? Nothing has changed. They were happy to carry out any order from Washington under Biden. He's talking about Europe. They just don't like Trump. They fought him actively, really interfered in political life, in the election process in the United States. And then they were confused when Trump suddenly won. And then they mentally, like Biden more, mentally. But Trump has different ideas about what is good, what is bad, including in gender policy and some other issues. They kind of don't like it. He's talking about the European elites. But I assure you, Trump, with his character persistence, he will restore order pretty quickly. And all of them, you'll see, it will happen quickly. Soon, all of them will stand at the master's feet and gently wag their tails. So he's talking about the European elite and Trump. This is Putin talking about how none of these people who are puffing their chest out and talking about how evil Trump is, they're all going to end up capitulating anyway. So before we go to Davos, I will just run through the Iran thing really quickly because I promised you that I would. Let's just, I pulled together a quick timeline so we can kind of just explain, because I think it's more important to understand the Iran timeline than it is to actually run through clips and talk about what people are specifically saying. Although I am going to hit on one person specifically, Lindsey Graham. So let's see, from Trump's perspective, January 13th, Trump urges the Iranian protesters to take over your institutions and said, help is on the way, right? He puts that post on Truth Social. I think we looked at that on Friday. January 14th through 15th, the next day, that was last Tuesday and Wednesday. That's when Trump tells, I think it was last Tuesday and Wednesday. Let me fact check that. 14th and 15th was Wednesday and Thursday. So on Wednesday, that's when Trump tells reporters he was pleased Iran had canceled the hangings of over 800 people, right? And that's when he basically signaled that we're not going to actually get involved militarily with Iran. And then the 17th, he puts out rhetoric in doing an interview with Politico where he says it's time to look for new leadership in Iran. He's targeting Khamenei, the Ayatollah. He describes the Iran's supreme leader as a sick man who should run his country properly and stop killing people. That was the headline in Newsweek. He says that Iran is the worst place to live anywhere in the world because of poor leadership. That was also in Newsweek. Then the Ayatollah, Khamenei, responds to what Trump is saying, and he calls him a criminal. And he said he was responsible for fueling the unrest in Iran. He accuses Trump of instigating the protests, of paying people to go and start these fires and decapitate these police officers and light the ambulances on fire. And of course, you have Arakchi, the foreign minister. He is doing an interview with Fox News where he's saying the same thing. So they're all kind of saying the same thing. Khamenei's directing it at Trump. I think Arakchi is really just more generally just directing it towards the West, the United States, Britain, Israel. Then January 19th, yesterday, the Iranian parliament, their lawmakers, they compare Trump to the biblical Pharaoh, and then they compare Khamenei to Moses, framing Trump as the enemy of Iran. So again, we're getting a biblical analogy here from the Iranian government. And then Khamenei acknowledges that thousands have been killed in the protests. He describes some of the deaths as inhumane and savage, and reiterated that it was actually foreign influencers and foreign operatives in the crowd who were responsible for killing thousands of people. Again, okay, so even the Ayatollah is saying that thousands of people have died, but he's saying that these deaths are the result of Western intelligence agencies basically coming in and doing it. He then warns, this is from today, Trump is continuing to criticize Iranian leadership, amplifying earlier calls for a change of leadership. And then today, the Ayatollah, the Iranian military leaders and government officials are warning the West and Trump specifically not to take action against the supreme leader and saying if any hand of aggression is extended towards the Ayatollah, we will set fire to their world. Talking about the West. And then Iran's president, Pezeshkian, said that any threats against Khamenei would be treated as an act of war. Okay. So now I want to run through real quick Lindsey Graham. So Lindsey Graham, going back to January 4th, so this will be the day after Maduro is kidnapped. Remember, Maduro is quote unquote kidnapped. I think it was him willingly surrendering and saying, all right, I'm ready, Mr. President. Take me away, and let's skip this show. Let's kick off 2026 with a bang. So the next day, January 4th, Lindsey Graham goes on Fox News. He starts making statements in the press, and he starts saying there is a clip where he says to the Ayatollahs, you need to understand if you keep killing your people, Donald J. Trump is going to kill you. He says to the people of Iran, help is on the way. He then goes and does an interview. Like these statements that he's making online, both written form and in video clips, then lead to a Fox News interview on January 7th where he's talking about all this stuff. He compares Iran's leadership to modern day Hitler. January 8th, that interview was on January 7th. So January 8th, the GOP lawmakers start criticizing President Trump's Iran rhetoric because it's too focused on potential military escalation rather than domestic priorities. Thomas Massey says we have problems at home, shouldn't be wasting military resources on another country's internal affairs. January 13th and 14th, so this is when Trump kind of steps up and says, if anybody gets killed, we're going to step in, take the institutions to the Iranian patriots, move forward. The rhetoric is escalating. Lindsey Graham then gets super excited, and he steps forward, and that's when he says, I haven't slept in 5 days. I'm so excited. Like, I can't wait for this, right? January 17th. So this is when Trump, I believe, is making the statement about new Iranian leadership. He's shifting his focus then to the Ayatollah specifically. And that's when GOP lawmakers start posting all over X about supporting Trump's tough stance and saying, yes, like we need to move, we need to overthrow the Iranian government, after Trump has already said, they've cut back. They're not going to do the hangings. I think we're good. GOP is still pressing full court press, right? Meanwhile, all of the Iranian security forces are rounding up all these protesters, rounding up all these rioters. That's what's being reported in the Iranian press. And then we start getting criticisms of Trump's military rhetoric, like his rhetoric surrounding military escalation, because now the rhetoric has shifted from Iran to Greenland. Because over the course of the past, 4 or 5 days, ever since Trump basically signaled that he was going to not pursue military action because they didn't do the 800 hangings, right? They canceled the hangings. He then starts shifting towards Greenland and talking about, well, why shouldn't we have Greenland? Who's going to stop us? Stephen Miller goes on Fox News and says, nobody's going to stop us if we take Greenland. There isn't a military out there in Europe who can stop us. Like, we're the United States. We are Europe's military, effectively, is what he says. And then, let's see. So now where it currently stands is that Lindsey Graham jumps on a plane, and once the whole military operation falls apart, Lindsey Graham jumps on a plane, flies to Jerusalem to meet with Netanyahu. He's been there for several days. And meanwhile, David Barnea comes to the United States. I think they both meet, and then Lindsey Graham goes to Jerusalem. It was one or the other. David Barnea is going around Washington trying to convince and lobby Washington to get more aggressive with Iran, while Lindsey Graham is getting his marching orders from Netanyahu and company. As all this is happening, it's like all the attention has gone from Venezuela, the geopolitical attention, to Iran and Greenland. While this is all happening, the Board of Peace gets announced. And that's over the weekend. The Board of Peace gets announced. I think that was on Friday. and phase 2 of the Gaza peace plan. And Trump says we're going to have Qatar and we're going to have Turkey involved. And then all of a sudden, 60 countries get involved to join this board of peace. And it all kicks off with the disclosure, I think it was yesterday morning or maybe 2 days ago, that Putin had been invited. We talked about this morning on Badlands Daily. Kirill Dmitriev affirms on X that Russia has been invited. We get, I think I just saw like an hour ago that Lukashenko from Belarus, he was also invited, but he has now posted videos of himself signing like the official document that like affirms his participation in this board of peace. Initially, it looks like that I'm sorry, I removed myself. It looks initially like Netanyahu is not going to be invited. And I'm sorry, I'm just summarizing some of these articles as I've been reading through them for the past, 5 days. Jerusalem Post writes that the board of peace is moving forward without Israel. Israel will not have a seat. Netanyahu has screwed the pooch. And then we learned late yesterday that actually Netanyahu was invited. So let's pull that up. Netanyahu was invited, and because Netanyahu was invited, Israel will have a seat, but it's unclear whether he's actually going to join. It says Netanyahu invited to join Trump's Gaza board of peace alongside European Middle East leaders. It says at least one country, France, signals its intention to decline Trump's invitation. As far as I know, that's the only country so far that would be Macron, has said that they're not going to join. That they're not going to join the board of peace. Here's Dmitry Peskov, the spokesman for the Kremlin, said President Putin also received an invitation to join this board of peace. Russia was seeking to clarify all the nuances of the offer with Washington, he said, without adding if the Kremlin chief was inclined to join, they're going to join. Lukashenko just joined that, which means, Lukashenko is an extension of Russia, Belarus. That means Russia is going to join. The Board of Peace, which will act as an oversight body for Gaza and which Trump will chair, will largely be made up of heads of state from around the world. Trump has invited 60 countries to join the board, and permanent membership will be available to those who pay $1 billion. I love that. It's like a pay-to-play thing. So like all the hypocrisy of what the deep state has been doing for years, like secretly, Trump was just doing out in the open, and he's kind of forcing them to call out some of these dynamics. But again, the money will probably be used to like fund whatever the bureaucracy is, how this thing is going to operate. Israel's inclusion adds to a complex mosaic of invitees. They include traditional U.S. allies from Europe, as well as states that have been adversarial to Israel, such as Turkey, which has hosted some of Hamas's leaders. India and Pakistan are both invited. The Board of Peace's charter does not mention Gaza, suggesting that Trump may want it to address other conflicts as well. But the UN Security Council's council resolution pertaining to the board that was passed last month, it restricts its mandate to the Strip and approves it only until the end of 2027. So this is where it's going to get really interesting, because the UN Security Council, the resolution that they passed, says that this board of peace can only regulate the Gaza Strip. And yet we're getting signal now that Trump actually intends to use it to address other geopolitical challenges. So that's going to bring the Board of Peace into direct conflict with the UN. The U.S. is aiming to hold the board's first meeting on the sidelines of the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland on Wednesday. Officials familiar with the matter have told the Times of Israel within the Strip it will act as an umbrella for a few other governing bodies. A Turkish representative, as well as one from fellow hostile state Qatar, will sit on the more consequential Gaza Executive Board, which will be more directly involved in overseeing the post-war management of Gaza. Qatar also hosts Hamas's leadership. The inclusion of both countries was met with staunch objections from Jerusalem, with Netanyahu's office saying Saturday that the body's makeup was not coordinated with Israel and contradicts its policy. After Netanyahu's statement, an unnamed senior American official was quoted by the Axios news outlet saying, quote, "This is our show, not his, and if he wants us to deal with Gaza, it will have to be our way." So there you go. That's the middle finger to Netanyahu, and basically saying, we're in charge now, you're not in charge. In the wake of that tiff, Netanyahu convened several meetings Sunday morning with the security cabinet, the full cabinet, and the party chairs in his coalition. The invitation of Russia to the Board of Peace came after Putin had previously praised Trump's efforts to resolve conflicts. Quote, he's really doing a lot to resolve these complex crises, which have lasted for years, even decades, Putin said of the U.S. president in October. Referring to the situation in the Middle East, Putin said, if we succeed in achieving everything Donald has strived for, it will be a historic event. The fact that he calls him Donald, I mean, they're on a first-name basis. The Kremlin has also repeatedly criticized Israel's war in Gaza, launched in response to the Hamas-led October 7, 2023 onslaught, and called for restraint. Kazakh President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, an ally of Putin, will join the Board of Peace after accepting an invitation to do so, and wants to contribute to bringing about a stable Middle East peace. His spokesperson said on Monday, quote, the head of state sent a letter to the president of the U.S. expressing sincere gratitude and confirming his agreement to join this new association, noting his country's commitment to contribute to the achievement of lasting peace in the Middle East, strengthening interstate trust and global stability. Let's see. Belarusian President Lukashenko, another close Putin ally, was also invited. Lukashenko welcomed the invitation, and we now see videos online of him signing the formally accepting by signing the agreement. Here's a post from Viktor Orban. Says, with President Trump comes another piece, another letter has arrived. Let's just pull this up on X. And the reason I'm going through this detail, guys, is because I think this is like the closest thing that we're going to see to the sovereign alliance. Trump is literally forming the sovereign alliance right here. Like, this is the bureaucratic, tangible sovereign alliance that he's forming that is not just going to be about Gaza, but apparently it's going to be about other geopolitical events. It says, with President Donald Trump comes peace. Another letter has arrived. Hungary's efforts for peace are being recognized. President Trump has invited Hungary to join the work of the Board of Peace as a founding member. We have, of course, accepted this honorable invitation. And then he posted the letter that is addressed to him, signed by Trump. All right, so going back to this Times of Israel article, says some other European countries have been invited, including Hungary. I talked about Orban, which we just did. Separately, the UK and Germany both acknowledged their invitations on Monday. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer said that Britain has signaled its willingness to play a role in the second phase of the ceasefire in Gaza. When asked about the Board of Peace, speaking at a press conference, Starmer said Britain was in discussions with its allies on the terms. Germany thanked Trump for his invitation to the board, saying it would examine what contribution it could make toward the goal of a lasting resolution to the Gaza conflict. A government spokesperson in Berlin said. The spokesperson told journalists at a regular press conference that the government does not share concerns about Trump's board possibly undermining the United Nations. Quote, this is the central multilateral framework for us, said the spokesperson about the UN, adding that it is an important instrument in these times of unprecedented global crisis. France, by contrast, does not intend to answer favorably to its invitation due to concerns about undermining the UN, a source close to French President Emmanuel Macron told AFP on Monday. The board's charter, quote, goes beyond the sole framework of Gaza, the source said, adding that, quote, it raises major questions, particularly regarding respect for the principles and structure of the UN, of the United Nations, which under no circumstances can be called into question. It's above reproach. It's a god, right? That's the way they're acting. And while Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney intends to accept his invitation, a source in his government said the country will not pay the $1 billion for a permanent board seat. Quote, Canada will not pay for a seat on the board, nor has that been requested of Canada at this time, the government source said. The source added that Carney had initially indicated he would join the board because it is important to have a seat at the table to shape this process from within. That is exactly what I said Netanyahu is going to do. Netanyahu is going to convince his friends in Israel that they're going to join because they want to control the outcome of this thing. They want to be on the inside. That's what Carney's saying too. On Sunday, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, spokesperson, said he believes member states are free to associate in different groups. That's a positive signal from Guterres. The United Nations will continue with its mandated work, the spokesperson said. Okay, and so Trump has made this demand that he wants Now that everyone has gotten the invitation, which just went out, I guess, yesterday or the day before yesterday, in the past 48 hours, he wants a formal signing ceremony in Davos during the World Economic Forum, because why not? We're all already going to be together. We might as well sit down and celebrate and have a ceremony of this new board of peace. And that's what's really, I think, getting people a lot of heartburn, because we have seen how these shills, these deep state regime shills, love to run out on the stage with Trump and get their 15 minutes, get their Kodak moment. They want to be included in the picture. But this is one where they're probably having a little bit of reluctance, because the optics of how this thing is going to stand against the UN and is going to undermine the UN in a really positive way. Here's another article from yesterday. World leaders show caution on Trump's broader board of peace amid fears of the UN. And it says governments reacted cautiously on Sunday to U.S. President Donald Trump's invitation to join his Board of Peace initiative aimed at resolving conflicts globally, a plan that diplomats said could harm the work of the United Nations. It says only Hungary, whose leader is a close Trump ally, gave an unequivocal acceptance in response to the invitations, which have been addressed to some 60 nations and began arriving in European capitals on Saturday, according to diplomats. Other governments appeared reluctant to make public statements, leaving officials to express concerns anonymously about the impact of the work of the UN. The board would be chaired for life by Trump, so he's making himself king of the board. I love it. And would start by addressing the Gaza conflict and then be expanded to deal with other conflicts, according to a copy of the letter and draft charter seen by Reuters. So there you go. And remember, Trump said back in September, he's begrudgingly putting himself, he's like, I already have enough stuff going on, but you know what? I guess I'll make myself the chairman of this board of peace. Like, whatever. I guess nobody else is going to do it. I might as well do it. And now he's appointed himself for life, apparently. I love it. Member states would be limited to 3-year terms unless they pay $1 billion each to fund the board's activities and earn permanent membership, the letter states. Quote, this simply offers permanent membership to partner countries who demonstrate deep commitment to peace, security, and prosperity. The White House said in a post on X. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, that's our girl, visiting South Korea, told reporters her country was ready to do our part. Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney said he had agreed to Trump's board of peace Gaza. Yeah, in principle. We already read that. And then goes on to mention how the UN had signed a resolution allowing the board of peace to run through the end of 2027, as if the UN has that kind of authority to stop it. It says, undermining the UN. The inclusion of a charter in the invitation letter stoked concerns among some European governments that it could undermine the work of the United Nations, which Trump has accused of not supporting his efforts to end conflicts around the world. Remember, I played the video a few weeks ago where the spokesperson for the Secretary General of the UN affirmed. The journalist asked, "Has the United States paid its dues this year for the UN?" And they said, "No, not yet, but they still have time." And they said, "All right, well, if they don't pay their dues, doesn't that mean that they lose their vote? Like they're not allowed to vote on things anymore?" And he said, "Yes, that is what's stipulated in the charter." So Trump is already signaling that he's not going to participate in the UN to any real extent anymore. And that's probably a good thing, because the UN the American delegation historically at the UN has been the turd in the punch bowl that kind of prevents a lot of these things that other countries want to happen from happening. The two-state solution being probably the best example. It says right here, quote, "It's a Trump United Nations that ignores the fundamentals of the UN Charter," said one diplomat. 3 other Western diplomats said it looked as if it would undermine the United Nations if it went ahead. A further 3 diplomats and an Israeli source said that Trump wanted the Board of Peace to eventually have a broader role beyond Gaza that would oversee the other conflicts that Trump has said he has resolved. The leaders of France, Germany, Italy, Hungary, Australia, Canada, the European Commission, and key Middle East partners were among those invited, according to the officials. We have, of course, accepted this honorable invitation, said Viktor Orban. The document said, quote, "Durable peace requires pragmatic judgment, common sense solutions, and the courage to depart from approaches and institutions that have too often failed. There was a quote, need for a more nimble and effective international peace-building body," it added. A spokesperson for UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres Said Guterres believes member states are free to associate with other groups. Trump, who covets the Nobel Peace Prize, said in the letter that the board would convene in the near future, adding, quote, this board will be one of a kind. There has never been anything like it. Another senior UN official did not address the plan directly, but said the United Nations was the only institution with the moral and legal ability to bring together every nation, big or small. Quote, and if we question that, we fall back in very, very dark times. Annalena Baerbock, president of the United Nations General Assembly, told Sky News, adding that it was up to individual states to decide what to do. Trump has long been wary of multilateral institutions, particularly the United Nations. He has repeatedly questioned the effectiveness, cost, and accountability of international bodies, arguing they often fail to serve U.S. interests. The U.S., which was required to pay 22% of the UN's regular budget, currently owes $1.5 billion, according to UN officials. There you go, guys. So the U.S. is funding 22% of the UN's regular budget, and we are delinquent $1.5 billion because we haven't paid them this past year. The White House on Friday named some individuals who will sit on the board, which would outlive its role supervising the temporary governance of Gaza under a fragile ceasefire since October. They included U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff, former British Prime Minister Tony Blair, and Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner. Israel and Hamas signed off on Trump's plan, which says a Palestinian technocratic administration will be overseen by an international board, which will supervise Gaza's governance for a transitional period. Going for global peace role, quote, it's going to, in my opinion, start with Gaza and then do conflicts as they arise, Trump told Reuters in an interview earlier this week. Many rights experts and advocates have said that Trump overseeing a board to supervise a foreign territory's governance resembles a colonial structure, while Blair's involvement was criticized last year due to his role in the Iraq War and the history of British imperialism in the Middle East. The White House did not detail the responsibilities of each member of the board. The names do not include any Palestinians. The White House said more members will be announced over the coming weeks. It also named a separate 11-member Gaza executive board to support the technocratic body, including officials from Turkey and Qatar. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office said the composition of this board had not been coordinated with Israel and contradicted its policies. Okay, so again, Trump is creating a new UN, basically. He's creating the Sovereign Alliance. Rather than trying to go in and fix the UN, which is a totally failed organization, which is that was the vehicle that the World Economic Forum was going to use to take over the world. That was the one world government, right? He's just creating an entirely new, separate body that is going to challenge the UN for supremacy, because might makes right, and the strong do what the strong want, and the weak suffer the will of the strong. That is the law of the jungle, which Delcy Rodriguez, Vladimir Putin, and Donald Trump have all openly said in the past 2 weeks. Like, that's the real international law. All right, let's take a quick ad break. We'll come back. We'll do some more Davos. Yeah, we're just gonna do more Davos, and then we'll talk about some of the chaos with Greenland, and as we talk about Davos. All right, this is Geopolitics with Ghost for the books. We'll be back in a bit.
Get you some of that beard oil.
Now that I'm alone, got the close up. Do you see how awesome my beard looks right now?
I use the beard oil every single day. First thing, comes out feeling all silky smooth. I take the dropper and I manually apply the oil directly to my mustache. Nice and, oh man, I love it. And then I do drops all throughout the hair, and then I just rub it all in. And then I top it off with the tallow stick on the face.
Dude, I feel like I have to grow a beard just to try this beard oil. It sounds
Do it, Jay.
amazing.
It's all from softdisclosure.com, and the best part about it is you'll be supporting Badlands Media, Annie from Willow and Farms, and basically 3 of Annie's neighbors. So that's 5 total American companies that you'd be supporting with one purchase.
I have been using the Soft Disclosure scentless beard oil every day after the shower. It looks unkempt, but it feels silky smooth. I want to look a little wild and unapproachable, but for the woman I trust, she'll be like, oh, it's actually kind of soft. He is approachable after all. Otherwise, stay away. And Soft Disclosure will help you too with that if that's the very specific vibe you're going for.
That is very specific, yes.
You guys are supporting American businesses when you do that. It's absolutely incredible, and you get a great, great product.
What is the Sovereign Alliance? The Sovereign Alliance are a collection of leaders and countries that are aligned not in the vision for their countries, but against a vision that has been thrust upon them. I believe that the Sovereign Alliance is less a battle for something and more a battle against something. They are against globalism, collectivism. They are against the rules-based international order.
Sovereign Alliance, the latest addition to Badlands Rise merch, available now at badlandsmedia.tv/rise.
Hey there, Earthlings! I'm here on the streets of New York to tell you about something that's literally out of this world. You know, traveling between dimensions really takes it out of you, but I've found the perfect solution. My Shroom Vibe can now be your Shroom Vibe. Elevate your frequency. Get microdose capsules, gummies, and chocolate bars at myshroomvibe.com. Use code BADLANDS for 10% off your order. Trust me, galaxy hopping demands balance, and ours comes from Mother Nature. Organic, not synthetic. It's the real deal. Sai Lee, if you know what I mean. Check it out. Your frequency will thank you. Visit myshroomvibe.com. Organic goodness, not synthetic. Use code BADLANDS.
Tell me lies, tell me sweet little lies. If I could turn the page in time, then I'd rearrange just a day or two.
All right, welcome back to Geopolitics with Ghosts. I'm your host, Gordon McCormick, the ghost of base Patrick Henry. Today is January 20th, 2026, and we are getting into the second hour here of the show. We're going to go deeper into Davos as we kind of like reference back and forth the different events that are happening around the world. So I think that it's all connected, it's all integrated, and rather than trying to just like do segment by segment, it might make sense to kind of reference some of these developments as we go. I want to address, there's a lot of consternation in the chat right now, the various chats. I see the chat over on Rumble, I see the chat over on YouTube, where people are getting a little panicky because the word technocratic is in this charter. Technocracy. Yeah, guys, technocracy is not good. Technocracy is, well, at least in the traditional sense, the understanding that we have of technocracy, that was the World Economic Forum's plan for a one world government, was a technocratic government. Okay. And if you haven't noticed, what President Trump does is he uses the enemy's plans against them, right? He drafts off of the enemy and he makes the enemy think that they're going to get their way until the very last second. He nudges them. He nudges them at the last second, and all of a sudden they go a different direction and they don't get exactly what they want. The Iran situation would be one example. The Venezuela situation would be another example. There's a lot of angry deep state television characters right now because they thought they were getting a new government in Venezuela and they didn't get a new government. It was not a regime change. It was something very different. Same thing with Iran. They thought they were getting a new government in Iran. They're not. All they got was a failed color revolution, and now all their operators, many of whom I believe were probably Assad and maybe CIA, they're all getting rounded up by the Iranian government right now. Meanwhile, as Khomeini and the Ayatollah and the Iranian president and the Iranian foreign minister are all accusing the West, primarily Israel and the United States, of sending paid operatives into the crowds in Iran to instigate the riots and start, this revolution against their government. President Trump, as we just saw at the very beginning, the thing that we started with, just said that there are paid operatives in the protests, the ICE protests in America. Like, the messaging to me seems coordinated. You have the coordinated messaging where Vladimir Putin says something, talks about might makes right. And then all of a sudden, Stephen Miller is out there on Fox News saying, yeah, of course we're going to take Greenland. Like, Greenland's ours. We own Greenland. Like, why wouldn't we own Greenland? Who's going to stop us? Who's going to stop us? Denmark's going to stop us? France is going to stop us? No one's going to stop us, right? Now, again, like, in an objective world, objectively speaking, we don't want to behave like that once we have a peaceful, multipolar world. But the truth is that is how we've always behaved. That is how the State Department has always behaved. They've just always put window dressing in front of it to make it look very passive and very like friendly and very like, oh, like we're doing this because we love you. It's like the meme of the woman who's holding the needle and pointing the pistol and saying, I love you. It's like, that's what COVID was. Yeah, that's pretty much how the State Department has operated, just setting up a feudal system, a global feudal system where every country in the world is a vassal and might makes right. And if you don't do exactly what we say, we're going to overthrow your government again, or we'll just send in the U.S. military, just kill everybody. One way or the other, we will get our way. That's the State Department's MO. Trump is basically just doing this narratively now, and it's forcing a conversation that is making the globalists very uncomfortable because they don't want to talk about this stuff in these terms. And yet here we are talking about it. So a technocratic government in Gaza, and everybody's now talking about technocracy, and everyone's pointing out that Tony Blair is an Epstein Island guy. Yeah. Everyone's pointing out that Palestine was a British colony, as the Times of Israel article said, and that was from which Israel was created. Yeah. All of this it's like Trump is just putting the breadcrumbs on the table, and they're coming up and just licking the breadcrumbs up right behind him, and he's leading them right around by their nose. So let's give an example of, before we go to some Davos clips, let's give an example of this Iran situation and how Lindsey Graham has really bitten off more than he can chew. I understand now why Trump kept Lindsey Graham in power. Like, everyone was like, why does Trump keep endorsing Lindsey Graham? Because Lindsey Graham is almost like, he's such a belligerent neocon that he's just he's a perfect little bellwether, like a weather vane to kind of show you where the neocons are right now, because he can't help himself. He's up, he's down, like he's so emotional. He can't compose himself. When he's down, he's down. When he's up, he's up. Okay, so I asked Grok to find all the Lindsey Graham commentaries surrounding regarding the Arabs and their commentary on the Iran situation. And what it came back with was, says, on reevaluating the entire Arab world alliance, Graham stated, the Arab countries in the region have been more than disappointing. If media reports are true that the Arab states are comfortable with Iran's Ayatollah remaining in power, then I will have to reevaluate my entire view of the Arab world alliance. I've tried to stay hopeful about building on the Abraham Accords, but the practice of saying one thing behind closed doors and another in public is coming to an end. He emphasized that this could be, quote, the biggest moment for change since the fall of the Berlin Wall, referring to the Iranian protests, right? In response to reports that the Gulf states urged Trump against Iran strikes to avoid disrupting oil markets and regional conflict, Graham said, if it is accurate that the Arab response is action is not necessary against Iran, given this current outrageous slaughter of innocent people, then there will be a dramatic rethinking on my part regarding the nature of the alliances now and in the future. He warned that he would be dramatically rethinking the U.S. alliance with Saudi Arabia and other Gulf states if they intervened on behalf of Iran to avoid decisive military action. Arab states as unreliable allies. Graham remarked that if Arab countries intervene on Iran's behalf to block U.S. military action, they are not a very, quote, they are not a very good ally, and such behavior would call future partnerships into question. He added that he would oppose any agreement binding the U.S. to Arab countries if they undermine U.S. interests by halting action against Iran. In one instance, he suggested the Abraham Accord should be reconsidered in light of these positions. Boom. There it is. Maybe we should just tear up the Abraham Accords if the Arabs aren't going to let us have war. That's what he's saying. It says framing as a religious war and end to double talk. Graham described the situation as a religious war and threatened that the U.S. would reevaluate alliances if the Arab states remained comfortable with the Ayatollah remaining in power. He called out the gap between what Arab leaders say and do publicly and the calming messages they convey in diplomatic discussions, noting that the era of double talk must end. So basically, you know, the Sovereign Alliance just is rug pulling Lindsey Graham, and Lindsey Graham is prepared to flip over the kitchen table, take his ball and go home, and basically say, you know what, we're not going to have world peace. If Arabia is saying that we're not allowed to have a war with Iran, then maybe we should just go bomb Arabia too. That's pretty much where we're getting to at this point. Okay. Now, consider the fact that his masters are the Jewish diaspora, the Israelis. And then look at this headline. Which is too many tabs open. Bezalel Smotrich. We went over this on Daily, so I won't spend too much time on it. But Smotrich calls to shutter U.S.-led Gaza Coordination Center, resettle the Strip. Israeli Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich says the time has come to dismantle the headquarters in Kiryat Gat, said Smotrich, the chair of the far left or the far right religious Zionism party, in remarks shared by his office to the media, referring to the southern Israeli city where the center is based. And the center, of course, is the Washington established Civil Military Coordination Center, which it was built last October as a center for civilian and military personnel from other countries to work alongside U.S. and Israeli officials on post-war Gaza planning. This is like the headquarters for the Sovereign Alliance that's located in southern Israel. Okay? Built by the U.S., run by the U.S. It says by dismantling the headquarters, Israel will be able to remove representatives stationed there from, quote, countries like Egypt and Britain that are hostile to Israel and undermine its security, and will instead be able to do what is best for the Jewish state. Smotrich said he declined to explain why he had singled out the United Kingdom for criticism. The Prime Minister's office, the U.S. State Department, and the U.S. military's Central Command did not immediately respond to requests for comment. Says Smotrich, speaking at an event marking the establishment of the new Jewish settlement of Yatziv in the West Bank, said that although Trump deserved Israel's gratitude for his part in returning the hostages held by Hamas and other terror groups in two separate deals, his plan for Gaza is, quote, bad for the state of Israel and must be shelved. Instead, he said, Hamas should be given a very short ultimatum to disarm and go into exile, and once the ultimatum expires, the military should storm Gaza with full force and destroy the terror group. Quote, Gaza is ours and its future will affect our future more than anyone else's, he insisted. And as such, Jerusalem must, quote, take responsibility for what is happening there and impose military rule over its roughly 2.3 million residents. The far-right minister's address focused primarily on making the case for reversing the sin of Israel's 2005 disengagement from Gaza, a central tenet of his political career, boosting that the government had corrected the sin of expulsion from a number of northern West Bank settlements, which took place concurrently with the withdrawal from Gaza in 2005. Smotrich argued that, quote, there is one sin that we have not yet been able to correct, even when it seemed that we had the opportunity to do so, the expulsion from Gush Katif. Gush Katif was the block of 17 settlements located within the Gaza Strip, which were home to around 8,600 Jews. Israel withdrew from the enclave and evacuated the settlements in August 2005. That was done under, I believe it was Ariel Sharon was the Israeli prime minister. He pointed to the October 7, 2023 Hamas-led massacre in southern Israel as proof that Israel was required to return to the long-gone settlements along the Gaza coast. Quote, this is from Smotrich, wasn't the most terrible massacre that has befallen the Jewish people since the terrible Holocaust enough to make Israel's leadership understand what must be done, he asked, insisting that Israel did not pay a price in blood over the past 2 years of war so that the Turks and Qataris who still sponsor Hamas today and are no different from it in their desire to destroy the state of Israel can sit on our fence. Quote, Erdogan is Sinwar, referring to the former Hamas leader. Qatar is Hamas. There is no difference, he declared, referencing the United States' decision to include Qatari and Turkish representatives on the executive committee of the Board of Peace that will oversee the post-war management of Gaza. Quote, it is either us or them, Smotrich warned, either full Israeli control, the destruction of Hamas, and the continued suppression of terrorism over time, encouraging the enemy's immigration abroad and permanent Israeli settlement, or, God forbid, squandering the efforts and costs of the war and waiting for the next round. And that last line, ladies and gentlemen, is exactly what we need to deal with now in this moment. So when he says squandering the efforts and costs of the war and waiting for the next round, what he means is hibernating, going into political hibernation and waiting for this storm to pass over, waiting for the moment to pass on, waiting for Trump to be too old to be in office anymore. And maybe in 10 years, Smotrich reemerges with his friends. They come out of their little cockroach holes and they come slithering out from the rocks back into power. And they start this process all over again without Putin and Trump in power. And you could see how this could go very differently, right? Let's see. Are there any more quotes from him in this article? I don't think so. Yeah, there's not. Now, with that, what I want to do is I want to address his comments about October 7th. Let me pull up this link that I have, which is right here. We didn't get a chance to talk about this on Friday because we were talking about everything else, and primarily Venezuela. All right, so this is from was making the rounds all over social media. There were a number of videos showing this, but it says unprecedented Israeli settler terrorists carrying out attacks on the village of Al Migyar in the West Bank using motorized paragliders to infiltrate the village. And you can clearly see these are paragliding go-karts that are allegedly being flown by Israeli settlers, and they're coming in to engage in kinetic military attacks against Palestinians in the West Bank. Paragliding go-karts, guys, being flown by Israeli settlers in the West Bank. So I'm wondering now, let's just say the quiet part out loud. Are we going to learn that October 7th was not conducted by Hamas, but was actually conducted by Israeli settlers dressed as Hamas who went into Israel and killed a bunch of Israeli citizens as a false flag in order to generate the appetite worldwide for Israel to invade and annex Gaza? That's what I think I think we're headed in that direction right now. And these Israeli settlers are nasty people. You talk about nasty people who do not embrace Western values at all, whose lifestyle choices are completely incongruent with Christian values, Western values, American values. Let's look at this. There's one other thing that I want to show you. Just give me 1 second. I didn't have this prepared, but I realized this is actually very notable and relevant. Okay, let's go to my account. I know I have it on my account. So this guy compiled this documentary. I don't know if it's a documentary, but he put together like a short little clip talking about a town in northern and like upstate New York. And man, is it an interesting video. Where are we? Right. Right here.
This is
it's in English, so I'm gonna let him explain it.
Curious Joel, a village of 44,000 Hasidic Jews in upstate New York that primarily speak Yiddish, have an average of 7 kids per family, rely heavily on state assistance and welfare programs like Medicare, SNAP, housing assistance, and tax credits from their many kids. How many kids do most people have out here?
17, 18.
How do they afford 17, 18 kids?
They are proud to do what the Torah says, that you need to be multiple and fruitful.
Wow. How do people afford to have like 10 kids out here?
The community is based on this. So
Okay, so is it wealthy members of the community give charity?
yes, mostly.
I don't talk suspicious person.
You study Torah?
You work for Hamas?
What for work? How do you make money?
My wife.
Your wife?
I'm doing home care.
Brokerage, construction.
Most people on Medicaid, SNAP, EBT?
I don't know. I can't speak for other people.
What about you?
I'm not going to tell about myself.
The one thing I'm curious about, though, is the welfare use. Are you on welfare?
No. The Jewish people, just from Kiddush Joel, their taxes covers everything that we take back. They pay a lot of property tax.
Do you know anyone on welfare here?
I won't comment on that question.
Come on.
No.
Why not?
No.
What do you guys do for work here? You guys have like businesses, work a job, study Torah?
I have a job.
What do you do?
I'm in sales.
What do you sell?
Food.
Okay. What food do you sell?
Chocolates.
What? I feel like I'm getting bamboozled right here. Excuse me. You guys take EBT? What percentage of people would you say use EBT for their groceries here?
100%.
100%? What percentage would you say?
35%.
A little bit difficult. What take from that? Pop in here and say shalom. The synagogue? Lots of people praying. I'm not sure the schedule exactly, but 9 o'clock sharp, they're not at work. Question for you. What do most men do for work here? Can you give me some ideas?
Oh.
I'm just asking Hasidic Jews out here. What do you mean? Do people here survive off of welfare?
There is a percent, like all of the communities. You have 8 kids, you can also get benefits.
It's 2:59. Why aren't people at work?
These are all teenagers.
How old are you?
I'm 21.
You gotta wonder what these people do for employment. So if you want to talk about Sharia law and people living in a theocratic ethnic enclave, look no further. Curious Joel is an example of only Jews living here, and a lot of them are tapping into welfare benefits.
Yeah. So how much of that sounds familiar, guys? Like EBT, SNAP benefits, has that been in the news lately? Have people been talking about that? Remove like the identity politics, or like remove the labels, and you hear about people having, 8, 9, 10 kids, 17 kids, and then just using that to collect welfare from the state, right? I mean, oftentimes that's attributed to different ethnic groups than the Jewish community, but here we have an example of the Jewish community doing it, right? From my research and looking into the West Bank and how the settlers live, this is exactly how Israeli settlers live as well. And the argument that is made by the Israeli state, by the government, is that because they are on the forefront, they're like frontiersmen, basically. They are not expected to necessarily work a traditional job. Their job is basically to establish a community on the forefront of like Israel's frontier. And because of that, the government 100% subsidizes their housing. It subsidizes their food. It subsidizes everything, all their expenses. And the argument is because they are basically they're expanding the Israeli state, and they're expanding the territory so that people can come in behind them, generations behind them can come in and then establish commerce and establish a marketplace, right? So you have thousands of Israeli settlers living in the West Bank who are being subsidized by the government. Their government is being subsidized by the U.S. taxpayer, which means we are subsidizing the people living as Israeli settlers in the West Bank, right? Doesn't that give us a vested interest in what the Israeli settlers are doing? Doesn't that give us a seat at the table to decide or to ask questions about, were the Israeli settlers actually the people attacking the state of Israel on October 7th? You see where this is going? Okay. Then you get this video. Let's go back to my feed. And you get this video from where is it? Right. From Jonathan Greenberg in the ADL. And he says that right here. Listen to what Jonathan Greenblatt from the ADL. Listen to what he says.
Apparatus. I have 4. So number 1, we measure and track. Number 2, we monitor and disrupt. We have a whole apparatus. I have 40 analysts working full time, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, monitoring extremists. We monitor them online, social media, messaging apps, video games, cryptocurrency, podcasts, short form video, Wikipedia, LLMs. We monitor these people and we share the intelligence with the FBI. You saw last month, you heard about the thing that happened at Wilshire Boulevard Temple. Our analysts investigated what happened. They said they were Koreatown for Palestine, this group of people. They weren't. We were able to ascertain they were from a group called the Turtle Island Liberation Front. Turtle Island is how like left-wing activists refer to the United States. They don't call it America, they call it Turtle Island, like the Iranians call it the Zionist entity, right? They won't call it by its name. The Turtle Island Liberation Front, we gave them a whole dossier. What is Turtle Island Liberation Front? What are their ideas, their goals? Who are they? We identified the people who were in the synagogue. This was on Wednesday, December the 10th. On Monday, December the 15th, this is going to ring a bell. Kash Patel announced they cracked a terror ring where they arrested 4 people who were planning New Year's Eve bombings. Turtle Island Liberation Front. At least one of the people I know for certain was in the building at Wilshire Boulevard Temple, vandalizing it and disrupting the event. So we're monitoring left-wing radicals like the DSA and the anti-war crazies and the pro-Palestine crazies. We're monitoring right-wing extremists like white supremacists, armed militia groups. We're monitoring political Islamists and Christian nationalists, all of them. And then we train. We're the largest trainer of law enforcement in America, extremism hate. We train 20,000 officers every year.
We are the largest trainer of American law enforcement in the country, the ADL. This is a nonprofit group, an NGO, and they're saying that they work hand in glove with the FBI, monitoring podcasts. Everybody stop for a second and say hello to the ADL representative in our chat right now. Shout out to them, right? I hope they're enjoying the show. At least hit the thumbs up if you're going to be here. Appreciate that. And share the podcast with your friends at the synagogue if you don't mind. Because I think from there we can jump over to the video that we played this morning on Badlands Daily. I mean, so that guy just said, Jonathan Greenblatt just said, which by the way, remember Ash was like in a if I'm not mistaken, was it ADL or was it NAACP? Her lawfare. I can't remember. It may have been both, but it's definitely in NAACP. But anyway, they said that they are hiring or that they're training law enforcement officers on hate speech, right? Well, you got this clip from Miami.
I refuse to answer questions
Sheriff.
without my lawyer present. So I really don't know how to answer that
Okay.
question either.
Well,
way.
like I said,
you're not
This
going
is
to
freedom
jail.
of speech. This is America, right?
And I-
Veteran.
And I agree with you 100%.
All
We're
right.
just trying to see if it's you, and if we're not talking to the right person, we want to go see who the right person
Okay,
is.
how can I help you?
So pretty much it's just a statement that was made as far as,
Verbatim, it says the guy who consistently calls for the death of all Palestinians, tried to shut down a theater for showing a movie that hurt his feelings, and refuses to stand up for the LGBTQ community in any way. He even leaves the room when they vote and on related matters. Wants you to know that you're all welcome. Clown face, clown face, clown face. 3 days ago.
So you don't know if it was you?
I'm not gonna answer whether that's me or not.
Okay.
The concerning part,
Mhm.
and not concerning for the person who's posting it, what we're just trying to prevent is somebody else getting agitated or agreeing with the statement. We're not saying it's true or not.
Understood.
That guy who consistently calls for the death of all Palestinians,
Mhm.
that can probably incite somebody to do something radical. That's why we're here to talk about,
Mhm.
and we wanted to get your side of it. Was you that posted?
I'm sorry, is this guy a cop or is he a social worker? Like we're here to talk about how your post online may make people feel. We're here to talk about feelings. How much of a pussy do you have to be this guy right here with that badge around his neck, showing up with his goons and intimidating this woman because of something they think she posted online? This is, by the way, was happening in Europe 10, 15 years ago. Nothing was done about it. And now if you post something online like that, you will literally be dragged out of your house and thrown in prison. Okay? So this is how it starts. It starts like this, with like a visit to your house where they warn you about, hey, you shouldn't post stuff like that. 5 years from now, they won't even be asking. They'll just be dragging you out of your house and throwing you in prison.
That I would think to refrain from posting things like that, because that could get something
I
incited.
appreciate your concern. I appreciate you coming out here.
Okay,
that's it.
That is it.
Okay.
I'm gonna maintain my my amendment rights to not answer the question about whether that's. I hope
Thank
that's
you for your
understandable.
comment. We appreciate it.
Thank you
Have
as
a good
well.
day, okay?
You as well. Thank you.
All of
Take
those
care.
cops should be made famous. All those cops should
Don't
lose their
have the right to harm others.
Yeah, and then here's the Florida lieutenant governor, right? So this guy's a Republican, right? He's under DeSantis. Listen to what he says. This is Florida Lieutenant Governor Jay Collins, who is a special forces veteran. What a disgrace.
Other people with your words, and you don't have the right to say things that have really negative, really horrible meanings. When you want people to destroy Israel, that matters.
Yeah, Jay Collins, you are a scumbag. You're not an American, obviously. You should be ashamed of yourself. That is the Republican leadership in Florida right there. And we all need to recognize who the enemy is. The enemy is inside the tent. The enemy is within. And that's the enemy right there. The enemy is the Republican Party, who is going to crack down on speech because they ultimately serve a foreign nation. And that foreign nation, of course, is Israel. And it's very, very obvious that. Here, by the way, the left side of the screen, for those who weren't watching Daily this morning, this is from April 27th, 2023, posted by Congressman Randy Fine. And it says, made a secret trip to Jerusalem with Representative Mike Caruso to deliver Governor Ron DeSantis's HB 269, the strongest anti-Semitism bill in the United States, to Florida's Nazi thugs. I have news: attack Jews on their property, and you're going to prison. Never again means never again. And so, yeah, that's Ron DeSantis flying to Jerusalem to sign in a new hate speech law that the Republican Party passed for Florida, that made it possible for this sheriff to do what he's doing right here on the right. That was done by Ron DeSantis. So next time you want to talk about Ron DeSantis and you want to say that Ron DeSantis is some great patriot and, you know, he's going to be the next Donald Trump, absolutely not. You have to understand what we're actually looking at here. And what is technocracy? To answer the person's question from before, this is technocracy. Monitoring your speech online, monitoring your activity online, pre-crime, using algorithms and AI to determine what you're going to do next and then trying to circumvent that, right? That is what technocracy is. So we'll finish up with Davos here, but before we do, Diego Garcia is a air base in the Pacific, and big news today in the Indian Ocean, because the British government is giving this back to Mauritius, I think is how you say it. And Trump calls it stupid and weak that they're doing this. They're giving up this major airbase. And as we didn't watch the full clip this morning with Scott Bessent, but Scott Bessent and Bannon explained that the airbase is actually controlled by the Chinese. And so basically the British are giving an airbase that has long been controlled by Five Eyes in the U.S. military, in the British military, to the Chinese military, which is a rerun of Bagram being given to the Chinese, remember? And if you think about the regions of responsibility and the fact that China should really be watching that region, Southeast Asia, this actually makes sense. Why should we have our boots on the ground, our boys in Diego Garcia, when that's China's neighborhood to police? I mean, if we're not planning on starting a war over there, why should we be there at all, right? I mean, if there's trouble, let China deal with it. We don't need to deal with it. But this is the dismantling of the British Empire. This is the total dismantling of the British Empire. And as Bannon explained on his show, Europe is not just the European continent. Europe is an empire that expands across the entire world. South America, Central America, Africa, Asia, Australia, Greenland, right? And this is because of corporations going there hundreds of years ago and putting a flag down and saying this belongs to us, and just basically exerting might makes right. If you don't have the ability to oppose us, indigenous populations, so therefore this belongs to us. So now we can pivot to Lavrov. Here's Lavrov again, the same day that we get the narrative about Diego Garcia being surrendered by the British to their local population, which apparently, according to Bannon and Scott Bessent, ultimately means it's actually going to China. We get this from Sergei Lavrov.
By the way, Maria said Britain, and without any insults, I believe that Britain should be called Britain, because a Great Britain is the only example when a country calls itself great. Another example was the Libyan Jamahiriya, which is no longer existing.
So Lavrov says, this is, look, you see in the upper right-hand corner, this is from today's date, January 20th, and he says, Britain should no longer be called Great Britain because it's not great anymore. It's just Britain. We should just no longer refer to it as GB, no longer refer to it as great. It's just Britain now. And you're seeing that because the empire is being broken. Guyana, which is next to Venezuela, that was being used as a proxy against Venezuela. That's not going to happen anymore. I don't know what's going to happen to Guyana, but you can imagine that the whole narrative around Venezuela is probably going to clean that up. And so now we can pivot to Davos, and we'll wrap up here. We'll spend the rest of the show talking about Davos. I think we aren't going to get to Patagonia today, but there is some crazy stuff happening in Patagonia. More Israelis are being arrested in Chile for starting forest fires, and there's massive protests about it. And there are massive forest fires all over southern South America in the Patagonian region from these fires that are being started. And ostensibly, it does look like it's some sort of like an IDF operation to do that. So here's Semaphore, which is, I think this is like a spook blog. But it says CEOs at Davos brace for Trump. Some chief executives making annual treks to Davos got a surprise note Monday. Donald Trump wanted to meet. The U.S. president plans to convene a group of corporate executives Wednesday evening after his anticipated speech at the World Economic Forum. The agenda is unclear, but the invites sent corporate staffers scrambling to rework schedules that have been months in the making. Tim Walsh, chair and CEO of KPMG US, told Semaphore he hoped to be at the meeting. Quote, being in the room enables me to get that feedback on what clients can expect on issues like tariffs, he said. But, quote, I'm not sure we're getting new information. Yeah, so Trump basically is telling these people at the last minute, hey, I know that you have planned to, you've planned your whole week out at Davos, but I want to meet now Wednesday nights or Wednesday evening. So you better rearrange your entire schedule, CEOs, to come meet with me. You then get, again from Semaphore, this is kind of a goofy story, but it's worth mentioning. This badge kerfuffle is what they're calling it. But basically it says, in the past, having a badge to Davos was like a sign of like you're an elite. And now it says nearly 200 Davos attendees who had registered and paid for hotel badges were left stranded in the cold on Monday. They waited in line for hours only to find out a dust-up between two event organizers led to a mix-up of who could be granted access to a tech and finance event called Imtech Invest. Davos, of course, is governed by a caste system of colored badges that not only unlock access, but also dictate to some extent how important you are. It's the capitalist hierarchy made flesh, a multicolored map of who actually matters. So to pay for a hotel badge and not get it left scores of people livid. Quote, it's really frustrating to not be able to get in for the things I came all the way here to do, one of the people said, who had stood in line for days, told Semaphore. Yeah, that's hilarious. Laugh out loud funny. Then you get, let's see, here is Larry Fink. Says BlackRock's Larry Fink says Davos feels out of step to many. Because remember, Klaus Schwab is not the chairman of the World Economic Forum anymore. Now it's Klaus Schwab. This is the first annual Davos meeting that we've held where Larry Fink is the CEO or the chairman or whatever they call him, and not Klaus Schwab. It says the World Economic Forum has become a cloistered and self-congratulatory body out of touch with economic realities. Its new leader, BlackRock CEO Larry Fink, said on the opening evening of the 2026 conference, quote, for many people, this meeting feels out of step with the moment. Elites in an age of populism, an established institution, and an era of deep institutional distrust, he said. And there's truth in that critique. Quote, if WEF, the World Economic Forum, is going to be useful going forward, it has to regain that trust, he said. He hinted that the forum, which holds occasional offshoots in China and the Middle East, will add new events in places where the modern world is actually built, naming Detroit, Dublin, Jakarta, and Buenos Aires. Fink, who runs the world's largest money manager, took over the World Economic Forum last year after its founder and longtime frontman, Klaus Schwab, stepped down following an internal investigation into his spending and workplace behavior. I don't know if y'all remember that, but he was accused of raping a bunch of women and embezzling a ton of money. Quote, it's obvious that the world now places far less trust in us to help shape what comes next, he said, but noted that he wouldn't be leading the forum if he didn't believe in it. Despite this year's record attendance of 850 CEOs and 65 heads of state, Davos faces a growing perception as an echo chamber for elites whose global standing has waned, seen as both unpopular and toothless. The 20th century multilateralism at Davos advance is crumbling under U.S. President Donald Trump, who is set to arrive Wednesday, bringing his brand of populism and militarism. Minilateralism is quickly emerging as the buzzword of the week here in the Alps. Yeah, and so remember, Trump is flexing on NATO right now, this pincer move. And as a result, I think I shared this on Daily this morning, but resources are having to be diverted from NATO to Greenland. Mark Carney says that Canada is prepared to declare war on the United States if the United States makes a move on Greenland. Here is from a week ago, France, this populist leftist politician, this woman, introduced a resolution in the French legislature to for France to leave the integrated military command of NATO, which is a major step towards France leaving NATO altogether. That you couple with, I had a clip from Sergei Lavrov. Let's see. I have a few Sergei Lavrov clips. I just have to make sure I'm playing the right one. Oh man, there's some great clips we're gonna play here, but for some reason this Sergei Lavrov clip is not. So Sergei Lavrov, if I can find it on all my tabs, said that NATO is pulling itself apart. Let's see if I can just search for it. NATO. X doesn't seem to be working very well. I don't know if it's working well for y'all, but might just have to skip it. Here it is.
Alliance.
All right, so here's Lavrov talking about NATO. The same press conference we just saw, different clip.
Alliance. NATO and the OSCE are Euro-Atlantic entities, and they feel a dire crisis of NATO. Currently, there are discussions ongoing within NATO whether it's time to shut it down because one NATO member intends to attack another NATO member, but that's a different story. Alliance.
And they're talking, of course, of Mark Carney pledging, to enforce Article 5 should President Trump invade Greenland with the military, right? And now I have a clip of Trump responding to a question when he was getting on the plane last night. I think he was leaving if I'm not mistaken, he was leaving the national championship of he's leaving the national championship game, getting on the plane, and he was asked about whether they should be worried about that. See, Trump. Okay, so before that, let's listen to Putin just talk about Trump's plan with Greenland. So he says about the United States plan to annex Greenland. But it's only at first glance that this might surprise someone and lead them to mistakenly believe that these are just some extravagant talk from the new American administration. Nothing of the sort. In fact, the United States had such plans as early as the 1860s. Even then, the American administration was considering the possibility of annexing Greenland from Iceland. But the idea did not receive the support of Congress at the time. Incidentally, I would like to remind you that by 1868, American newspapers were ridiculing the purchase of Alaska. It was called madness, an icebox, and a garden of polar bears. We bought Alaska by Andrew Jackson. By the way, we bought Alaska from Russia. And the reason that Russia sold it to us is because if they didn't, they were worried that Britain was going to take it by force. Then President of the United States, Andrew Johnson. Therefore, the proposal on Greenland failed. This acquisition, the acquisition of Alaska, is certainly viewed very differently in the United States itself, as are the actions of President Andrew Johnson. Therefore, there is nothing surprising about what is happening today, especially since this story only began then and continued further. In 1910, for example, a trilateral deal was prepared to exchange territories between the United States, Germany, and Denmark. As a result, Greenland would have gone to the United States, but the deal fell through. At the time, during World War II, the U.S. set up military bases in Greenland to protect it from being taken over by the Nazis. And after the war, the U.S. offered to buy these islands from Denmark, which is pretty recent in terms of world history. In short, the U.S. has serious plans for Greenland. These plans have long-standing historical roots, as I have shown, and it is clear that the U.S. will continue to systematically promote its geostrategic, military, political, and economic interests in the Arctic. Isn't it interesting though that like Putin and Lavrov and Dmitry Peskov and Medvedev, like they're the ones who are coming out and justifying what Trump's doing and explaining why it's important. I love that Putin is like a history nerd and wants to give you the historical background on it all. Okay. So then here is Belgian Prime Minister. Let's actually go to Davos and listen to some of their commentary. And so now they're having their group therapy sessions here at Davos. Let's take a listen.
Say something. Well, negotiate with Putin, I think, is not a very good idea because, as the Americans said, if you want to speak, speak softly, but carry a big stick. We don't have a big stick. We can only speak softly.
Say something.
Well, negotiate with Putin, I think, is not a very good idea because, as the Americans said, if you want to speak, speak softly, but carry a big stick.
Yeah. So let's see. It says we don't have a big stick. We can only speak softly. Here's the same guy. This is the Belgian Prime Minister, Bart de Wever.
Else. But now so many red lines are being crossed that you have the choice between your self-respect. Being a happy vassal is one thing. Being a miserable slave is something else. If you back down now, you're going to lose your dignity. And that's probably the most precious thing you can have in a democracy. It's your dignity. But now...
Okay, and so here is the European Parliament. This is not Davos that I'm showing you here, but here is the European Parliament. Here's a Danish member of European Parliament, Anders Vestesen, basically addressing Trump from the floor of the European Parliament.
Thank you. Urmează domnul Anders Vistisen.
And I think he's going to speak Danish, so or whatever.
Let me put this in words you might understand. Mr. President, fuck off. Det var næsten sådan ordene lød.
So he says in English before he starts speaking, he says, Mr. President, speaking to Trump, let me put this in words you can understand. He says, fuck off. And then he goes on to give an address in Danish, I guess.
Og sagde meget klart, at hvis Trump...
You might feel our rules.
And then at the end of it, he actually ends up getting reprimanded by like the guy running the show. Listen to him.
Our rules. As much as you might feel, or the room might feel in this, we have clear rules about cuss words, language that is inappropriate in this room. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it is unacceptable, even if you might have strong political feelings about this.
So this guy thought he was going to get some like viral soundbite out there by telling Trump to F off, and then basically just gets cut off in the middle of his speech by the MC or whoever this other guy is. And he says, you can't say swear words. And, oops, you don't even have the power of projection to swear. Only Donald Trump is allowed to swear. You just sit down and shut your little Danish mouth. And Trump's going to come give you a little spanking later. Here's Lavrov again. We're going to go back to Lavrov because he's talking about how none of the European countries had solutions for Ukraine at all for years. It wasn't until President Trump that even the Americans had solutions.
Talking about other tracks of our interaction with the US, it also includes Ukraine, naturally, and we value that under Trump, the US became the only country that not only expressed the understanding and taking into account the interests of the Russian side, but also came up with the solutions. They took into account the root causes of the current crisis. We welcome such an approach, and we believe that it is completely justified in Alaska, in Anchorage on the 15th of August last year. And President Putin has repeatedly stated it publicly. We welcomed the proposals that were submitted by Washington prior to the meeting in Alaska. And we do hope up until now that this understanding is still in place. Talking about other tracks of our interaction with the...
Okay. So talking about how none of these people are peacemakers. The Europeans are all the European leadership are all sociopaths. They're the reason the world's burning right now. Let's see. Okay, so here's Larry Fink, so like kind of undermining the traditional thoughts on what the World Economic Forum is.
That's the goal of this year's World Economic Forum at Davos, to expose people to wider ranges of voices, to a wider range of ideas, maybe even an argument, but one that we have deeper understanding from. And I think not all of it's going to sound as good as the one that you enjoyed at that moment, like in music. And like in music, you're not going to agree with everything. But if you're willing to listen, it might leave something with you inside. It might stay with you. And maybe you will evolve and be better for it. And that's the mission of the World Economic Forum this week in Davos. And that's the goal of this year's World Economic Forum at Davos, to expose people to wider ranges of.
Okay, so that's Fink. Again, Fink has like been putting out all of this rhetoric that is not consistent with what the World Economic Forum has been about. So here he is. I think it was either yesterday or the day before yesterday. It looks like maybe it was 2 days ago, talking about how sustainable energy projects are actually not good because of the demands of AI and data centers. All these new data centers, the electrical demands are so enormous that we actually can't depend on, solar and wind to create electricity anymore.
The world is going to be short power. And to power these data companies, you cannot have just this intermittent power like wind and solar. You need dispatchable power because you can't turn off and on these data centers. The world is going to be short power.
Imagine that, the World Economic Forum in Davos saying that solar and wind are actually bad and it's not dependable enough because it creates intermittent power supplies. Here is, and I am going to send this clip to G Money. I need to send this. Here is Larry Fink saying, making G Money's argument.
And that's going to be AI and tokenization.
The internet's screwing up right now. It keeps making me refresh because I can't control the video. All right. So here's Larry Fink advocating for tokenization. You've heard G Money talk about tokenization, how everything needs to be tokenized because once it's tokenized, that's how you have proof of stake. That's how you have proof of ownership, right? Is tokenizing everything, basically putting everything on blockchain, right? Here's Larry Fink saying the exact same thing.
Going to the future, what are some of the mega trends that are going to reshape investing, asset management as you look forward?
There's two, but they're all interconnected, and that's going to be AI and tokenization of financial assets. So digital assets, those are the two mega trends that are going to totally reshape financial services. I had a lunch today with a very prominent former finance minister, central bank, very prominent guy. And he wrote a big paper on tokenization.
Right.
And he would say, he couldn't say it in his former role, but he would say it today as a private citizen. The banking system is being left behind in so many ways through technology.
But now let's go into the.
Yeah. So I can't wait to send that to G Money because Larry Fink is now, G Money and Larry Fink are now shilling for the same idea, which is tokenization basically makes it impossible to issue fiat currency because if your financial assets are all tokenized, your dollars are tokenized, which is like Bitcoin. And if your dollars are tokenized, you can't just print new money out of thin air because that would be fraudulent, right? This is pretty amazing. So finally, because we're at 4 o'clock now, 2 more videos. So I have, this is the one that I was looking for in a panic on Daily this morning. I couldn't find. Here is Macron with wearing his Top Gun aviators. Looks like a jackass talking about might makes right.
Look at the situation where we are. A shift towards autocracy against democracy,
for some reason,
more violence, more than 60
there's no
wars in
sound on this. I don't know
2024,
why,
an
but
absolute record.
anyway, he says,
Even if I understood
He says a shift towards a world without rules. The only law that seems to matter is that the law of the strongest. That's what RT is reporting, and they're saying RT is saying that he's rocking the sunglasses because of eye issues. So maybe he does have a black eye. And then, of course, Trump posting on Truth Social a text message he got from Emmanuel Macron. He says, "My friend, we are totally in line on Syria. We can do great things in Iran. I do not understand what you are doing on Greenland. Let us try to build great things. One, I can set up a G7 meeting after Davos in Paris on Thursday afternoon. I can invite the Ukrainians, the Danish, the Syrians, and the Russians in the margins. Let us have a dinner together in Paris together on Thursday before you go back to the U.S., Emmanuel." Yeah, he's just he wants to grovel at Trump's feet. Okay, and then so I think maybe we will wrap up and then do like rants. Because again, there's going to be like so much stuff is going to come out this week, and on Friday we'll probably spend the whole show talking about Davos and anything else that's developing in the world. But the forum meetings really began today. They've been there for a couple of days, but I think it kicked off, if I'm not mistaken, yesterday. That's right, it was yesterday. But here's Sergei Lavrov, once again, same press conference, saying that Trump's border peace is not just going to be involved in Gaza, but is also going to run other geopolitical matters as well.
I have already said in my introductory remarks, and Dmitry Peskov confirmed that yesterday, that President Putin...
Oh, you know what it is? It's my sound is cut off.
has received a new... I have already said in my introductory remarks, and Dmitry Peskov confirmed that yesterday, that President Putin has received an invitation by President Trump to become a part of the Board of Peace. We have also received annex to that letter, rather lofty document called a charter of the Board of Peace that states that the board will be prepared to deal not only with the Gaza sector, I don't think it's even mentioned there, but it will be tasked with the resolution of conflicts around the world. And naturally, we'd like to clear up the conceptual vision and the practical vision of our American colleagues of this initiative. We're trying to clear these matters up. We'll keep in touch.
Yeah, so now that I know that it's my computer just decided to mute itself for some reason. That's why I couldn't hear the Macron video. But let's go back and watch Macron real quick, because hear what he says about might makes right.
Look at the situation where we are. I mean, a shift towards autocracy against democracy, more violence, more than 60 wars in 2024, an absolute record, even if I understood a few of them were fixed. And conflict has become normalized, hybrid, expanding into new domains, space, digital, information, cyber, trade, and so on. It's as well a shift towards a world without rules, where international law is trampled underfoot, and where the only law that seems to matter is that of the strongest, and imperial ambitions are resurfacing. Look at the situation where we are. I mean, a shift towards...
Yeah, so the end of international law, but really what it is the end of the rules-based international order, where the world, where, you know, the elites get to decide who is right, who is wrong, who is moral, who is immoral. And it's all applied, of course, very arbitrarily, right? Oh my gosh. Okay. And then I guess this must be from the press conference that Trump was holding while we were live. But says Trump, RT is saying that Trump said
prisoners
he wants to take the Panama Canal. Let's play this real quick.
prisoners in Venezuela.
President, earlier on last year, you had indicated that you wanted to take back the Panama Canal. I know we've heard a lot about Greenland. Is that still on the table?
I don't want to tell you that. Sort of. I must say, sort of. That's sort of. Okay, one more. Prisoners in Venezuela.
President, Earlier on last
Love that. And then here's another one. I'm gonna have to like watch this whole press conference because I'm sure there's a bunch of great little clips. But here is Trump talking about an executive order to reintroduce insane asylums, which were eliminated from society in the 70s. Based, very based, because obviously those people have been weaponized against civilization. And then here is the question about inviting Putin to join the Board of Peace. Yeah, so all the rhetoric now, all the rhetoric is like Putin is backing Trump, Trump is backing Putin, Lavrov's backing Trump. It should be very clear. The sovereign alliance is out in the open. I mean, I hear mainstream media now talking about this alliance between Trump and these other world leaders and how real it is. And it's so obvious now. And I think we're going to see all of this come together in Gaza, and then Netanyahu and his ilk impose themselves on the Board of Peace. And then Trump and Putin together are going to take on Netanyahu. I think that's how I've been saying that for at least the past year, if not longer, year and a half. It looks like my browser has lost connection to the share screen. Yeah, there's just a lot of issues going on with StreamYard today. This week, really. This week, StreamYard's been a pain in the ass. So apologize for that. Everyone hit the thumbs up. Let's get some rants and get out of here. Yeah, everyone says no sound. Yeah, that's just a StreamYard thing. Brian and John have told me that's been happening to them too. StreamYard will just cut off the sound in the middle of your presentation, and then it'll send you a little note that says your audio has been cut. So apologies for that, guys. Yeah, everyone hit the thumbs up, and we will be back here on Friday. It says no audio, no sound from the last two clips. Well, if y'all want, I'll go back and play the last two clips. Just to make everyone feel good about themselves. So here's the one that I just played. Wait, I got to stop sharing and reshare my screen. StreamYard is really irritating me lately.
You invited President Putin to be a member of the Board of Peace? Yeah, he's been invited. Give any response to President Macron saying he will not join the Board of Peace? Oh, did he say that? Well, nobody wants him because he's going to be out of office very soon. So, that's all right. What I'll do is if they feel like Costa, I'll put a 200% tariff on his wines and champagnes, and he'll join. But he doesn't have to join. If he said that, you're probably giving it to me a little bit differently. But if he actually did say that, but as you know, he's going to be out of office in a few months. Have you invited President Putin?
All right, and so the clip before that was the Panama Canal clip, which is this one.
Prisoners in Venezuela.
President, earlier on last year, you had indicated that you wanted to take back the Panama Canal. I know we've heard a lot about Greenland. Is that still on the table?
I don't want to tell you that. Sort of. I must say, sort of. That's sort of. Okay, one more. Prisoners in Venezuela.
Yeah, I look forward to going back and listening to that entire speech. Wait, here's one about Greenland. Let's check out the one on Greenland. Oh, wait a minute. He was asked about replacing the UN. We got to watch that one. But before we watch that one, let's watch the Greenland one. This was all happening while we were live, so I wasn't able to watch this.
One more question.
President, you said you're confident something's going to get worked out in Greenland, but Greenlanders have made it clear they don't want to be part of the U.S.
Well,
What gives the U.S. the right to take away that self-determination?
When I speak to them, I'm sure they'll be thrilled. One more question.
Okay, so we're now going to enter a situation where the mainstream media, because they can't help but be in opposition to Donald Trump, are going to start advocating for self-sovereignty and national sovereignty over globalism and like unilateral one world government, which is what they've been pushing for years. They've been saying that individual countries can't be trusted to act in the interest of their own people. And so therefore we have to have a centralized command structure that makes sure that everybody has access to democracy, right? That's what the shills all say. Now they're going to be arguing the opposite. I mean, this is Trump's superpower. He's able to make people argue the positions he wants them to argue.
Please. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. I have two questions for you. One, do you want your Board of Peace to replace the UN?
Well, it might. I mean, the UN just hasn't been very helpful. I'm a big fan of the UN potential, but it has never lived up to its potential. The UN should have settled every one of the wars that I settled. I never went to them. I never even thought to go to them. They should be able to settle those wars. They don't. I believe you got to let the UN continue because the potential is so great.
And Mr. President.
Please. Yeah,
basically, he's going to create
so
a competition between the UN and his little Board of Peace, and we'll see. You know, may the best man win. All right. Then he was asked apparently about Greenland.
How far are you willing to go to acquire Greenland?
You'll find out.
Oh, what a legend! What an absolute legend! All right, guys. Let's see. I think we have at least one or two rants. Looks like ZBM $1. Putin forgot to mention the UD ambassador to Russia at the time. At that time, who was a big help in brokering the purchase of Alaska, Cassius Clay. He was also the reason Lincoln signed the Emancipation Act. Interesting. When he did. Yeah, interesting. Well, thank you for sharing that. All right, and then let me just double check whether we have, if you're listening on replay, you can go to badlandsmedia.tv/boosts or /boost and leave a rant at any time. Just want to make sure that we are caught up on those. Looks like we have a few. I think that one, I think we might be caught up because those we read last time. December 26th. Nope, we're caught up on those. Sweet. All right, guys, we'll hit the thumbs up and we're going to get out of here. And we will see you on Friday. I'm probably going to try to do, if Trump's going to speak tomorrow, I think he's speaking at 10:30. We got Breaking History at noon, but depending, I mean, I might just go live. I think his speech is scheduled for tomorrow morning. So I don't know. I might, we're certainly going to cover it on Badlands. And if possible, I'll jump in there and do commentary and whatever. But in either event, we'll probably talk about it on Breaking History if it's wrapped up in time. But yeah, otherwise, stick around. Hit the subscribe button if you're new to Badlands. And we will see you later on. The next show for Geopolitics will be Friday at 2. Everybody have a great day.
Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video. And a special thank you to all of our advertising partners. Please remember to shift your dollars to support those businesses that support Badlands Media.